Hey everyone, welcome to SimbleThings, the channel where I talk about living with C-PTSD and everything that goes along with that. So today's video, we're going to talk about the difference between depression and misery. So I know there's a lot of people that can sometimes confuse these things in conversation. I mean, mental health terms in general get like wildly misused all the time. So I was watching the latest video from Vegetable Police the other day, and he was talking about depression. He's talked about it a bit before, but this particular video, I feel like there was a lot of mixing up between depression and misery and being miserable, and the difference between being miserable and being depressed, because there's definitely a difference. So what is the difference between depression and misery? So first off, depression isn't just a mental health problem, it physically affects the brain, and people with depression and very intense depression will have very different brains than other people. So that's something straight away, like anybody can be miserable, but only people with like severe depression will have the changes in their brain, like there. Obviously, I know not everybody who is depressed or has these issues can get sent for brain scans or whatever, and doctors just don't do that, right? It's just not a thing. But that is a very like clear difference. So why do people kind of misuse the term? And I think one of the traps is that people often talk about being depressed when they're going through a really hard time. Maybe they lost a job, issues with family or something like that. These are things that can put us into like very bad situations, issues with money and whatnot, and they can make us miserable, and we can be very miserable for a prolonged period of time because our mood is directly linked to the situation around us. And I know there's all that whole positive thinking stuff and you need to just think positive, blah, blah, yeah, cool, no matter what the situation is. Your headspace is positive, but that's easier said than done. And I don't think anybody can fully have a consistent mood regardless of like the situation around them. And I think it'd be weird if somebody does. Like, we react to things. It's very human, and a natural reaction to a horrible situation or a difficult situation can be misery. Like, you can be miserable, and that's the thing. Now, I think when one of the problems comes up is that there's definite crossover between depression and misery. But if you want to really know if you have depression, see how you react when you are in a really good place with all of your kind of life stuff, everything's going well for you and whatever, and if you still get like heavy like depressive attacks, like bouts of depression where you can't even deal with getting out of bed or any of this kind of stuff, or you just find it so difficult regardless of how well your life might be progressing, you've 100% got depression. Like, that's like a key indicator. There's stories of very famous people committing suicide and, they've had lots of money and great lives and great partners or whatever, seemingly. But because they have depression, which is a very particular mental condition, it doesn't matter what's going on around you. It doesn't matter about the life around you. You have depression and that hits whenever it hits, and all that other stuff doesn't matter. If you lost your job and you don't have very much money and you're not sure how you're gonna get through this and you're feeling depressed, you might just be really miserable. And I'm not like saying that's not something to be bothered about or it doesn't count for anything. Sure, it does. I'm just saying it's a different thing from being depressed. You can be miserable or you can be depressed. You could be both, right? Like I say, there is crossover, but there is a very definite difference between being miserable and being depressed. So yeah, there you go. There is more information out there about the very physical changes in your brain, like the size of certain parts of your brain can change and things like that. But I didn't want to get too technical. Sometimes you keep it lighter, just more conversational. Do you know what I mean? Cool. So yeah, I think that wraps it up. Yeah, I think we've covered my main points. I just want people to understand that depression isn't directly linked to your life circumstances. Depression is something that just you have, and it happens when it happens. And, there's no reason why you couldn't win the lottery tomorrow and still be depressed. That's very possible. If you're miserable and you win the lottery tomorrow, you're probably not going to be miserable anymore. Although that might depend on what's making you miserable. But if you're miserable from finding it hard money-wise, job being difficult, all that kind of stuff, and then you get $1 million tomorrow, you would probably be less miserable. But if you were in a severe bout of depression, you might see a check for $1 million and just not even care. Just be like that can totally happen. So yeah, I think that wraps it all up for today. Remember, there is always help out there. I always put useful links in the description to the C-PTSD Foundation, I think it is. So, you can get information there. I think they've got a forum there too, so you can check that out. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in, everybody. Really appreciate any views, any comments, any subscribers. And until next time, remember, don't be afraid to ask for help. It is out there. And be well. Catch you later.